Hey, everybody, welcome back to my podcast. I call this Straight Talk, pulling back the curtain of medical malpractice. This podcast was created for you, but it was inspired by you because over the thousands and thousands of people that I've spoken to, this is the information that you told me you want to hear about. You want to know what's going on with medical malpractice. You're confused, you're frustrated. You have been a victim of medical malpractice and you call a lawyer, you don't know the first thing about what's going on. And you may be told that you don't have a case or that you do have a case, but you have no idea what comes next. You're not sure how the system was even created. And for those of you who I can't help, you really don't understand why the system is so broken. And that's why I'm going to be doing these podcasts, because I think you deserve to know all of this information. It's not information that you would know. Why would you? You're not going to pay attention to medical malpractice unless you're a victim. And when you do become a victim, unfortunately, you are now faced with a system that doesn't work for everybody. It only works for a small few. Those of you who have had this conversation with know full well what I've told you. I told you that most of the medical malpractice cases do not go anywhere because of a lack of permanent injury. Also, we have restrictions in the state of Maryland as to how much money you can get for certain aspects of your case. It's the first time anybody's telling you this. You have no idea. So I want to provide these podcasts to educate you and to give you the information that you deserve. Today, I want to talk about where this whole system comes from, how it was created, who are at the levers of power, who's running the show here in most of the cases, and why the system is broken for many people and you don't have access to the medical malpractice courtroom. So let's start from the beginning. How does this even begin in the first place? Medical malpractice lawsuits and all of the requirements for a medical malpractice lawsuit come from our laws. Now, those of us who live in Maryland, we may be aware that the capital of our state is Annapolis. And every year, the legislatures, people that represent us where we live, go to Annapolis to make laws, all kind of laws, not just medical malpractice laws, but laws that affect all of us. A big part of that is medical malpractice. This is where all of the laws are made. Many of those laws are made, and they don't favor victims. They don't favor people who've been injured. Instead, they favor the more powerful interests, the insurance companies and the hospitals. Why? Because they have a lot of money to spend on lobbyists who walk down the halls of Annapolis all day, every day, pleading their case on behalf of the powerful interests. Now, they have more money than we do. They have bigger numbers than we do. They have more important people, I guess, than we do. And they get heard more than we do because many of us don't show up. We don't know who our representatives are. We don't have an opportunity to talk with them, and we don't make our voices heard. Only after we're part of a medical malpractice system do we realize that there's a lot of injustice that's built into the system. So let's start from the basics. I'm going to share with you my screen. What I'm showing you is the Maryland General Assembly website. The Maryland General Assembly is in Annapolis where all of our laws are made. And as you can tell on this website, it has a lot of information about your representative. So you can scroll down, you can find who represents you. We have two houses in the Maryland General Assembly, the Senate and the House. And each of us have representatives who go to Annapolis to represent our interests. And I'm just reading along with you. Across the top here, you can definitely see that there's a lot of information about legislation. This really deals with legislation that's happening in Annapolis during the session that's going to start in January and is going to end in April. So from January to April. And part of what happens in Annapolis is that there are laws made about all different topics, but medical malpractice is always a hot topic. There's always legislation about whether there should be restrictions on the amount of money that should be given to people. People want that, a lot of legislatures want that money to be reduced. The powerful interests want that to be reduced. Those of us who represent people who have been victimized by medical malpractice, we want those numbers to be increased. There's also kind of restrictions on the kind of medical doctors that can come into court to testify on your behalf. Those of you who have spoken with know full well that under the Maryland law, you have to have a medical doctor come in to testify on your behalf. That's what the law requires, because if you're not a doctor, a regular person like you and me, we can't get on the stand and say what was done at a hospital was wrong. We have to have a doctor to help us. And those doctors charge lots and lots of money. They charge hundreds of dollars an hour, and they spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours on a case. And there's always legislation to be able to decide whether we need to restrict that or expand that. For example, are we allowing experts who are retired to be able to be testifying, or do they have to be practicing? And if they're practicing, how long do they have to be practicing? These are all the kind of things that happen in the Maryland legislature that none of us really know anything about. And they happen behind closed doors. And there is always legislation that winds up coming out to hurt victims rather than help victims. So I wanted to share that with you. So that's really important to know, because that's where this system is set up. And remember, it's set up by the powerful interests, the insurance companies, and the lobbyists. And we need to have more representation on our side for sure. But money talks in Annapolis like it does everywhere else in the country and in the federal government. And we have to be able to fight that battle. But remember, they have more money than us and they have more power than us. So that brings me to why this system may be broken. It may not be working for you. And the reality is just like with any other insurance, they would love to be able to sell you an automobile policy, but when it comes time to have a claim, not have a claims department. No insurance company wants to pay claims. They just want to be able to sell you insurance. Well, that is the same kind of thing that happens in medical malpractice. What do I mean by that? I mean that the medical malpractice insurance companies, these are the insurance companies that insure doctors and hospitals. They don't want to pay out claims. They don't want to pay you for having medical malpractice committed upon you if they can help it. So they've created a system that helps them more than it helps you. And that system is sometimes referred to as the medical malpractice tort reform system. And that means there are so many restrictions that prevent you from getting the access. And even if you get access to justice, there are so many requirements and obstacles and expenses that it just becomes a very difficult proposition for many of us to be able to help you in your medical malpractice case. So why is the system broken? It's broken because they don't want to pay you. And if they can find ways to avoid it, they will. The first obstacle that they put in your way is the expense of litigation. A medical malpractice case, and I've done videos on this for many years, a medical malpractice case, even a small medical malpractice, if there even is such a thing, can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars just in case expenses. Medical experts take up a lot of those costs because, like I said, they charge hundreds of dollars an hour and they spend thousands of hours on a case. But you have to have them. That's what the law requires. You must have doctors. And if you have a case of different medical specialties, you have to have a doctor in each one of those specialties testify about that particular specialty. So let's say, for an example, you had surgery malpractice and then you wound up getting an infection. Well, you need a surgeon to talk about the surgical malpractice issues, and then you have to have an infectious disease doctor talk about the infection. So just right then and there, you have two doctors who have to be paid to work on the case. That alone can cost tens of thousands of dollars. And if there's more specialties along the way, you have to get a doctor to address each one of those. So you can tell you need a doctor to address every one of those specialties. So you can tell that the case costs are going to skyrocket. And what does that mean? It means that after a case is done, and it takes about 2 or 3 years, you are likely to be in a situation where we're going to be spending more money on the case than the case is worth. And that's why I've told many of you I can't help you because you don't have a permanent injury. It's not that you weren't injured, and it's not that your life wasn't turned upside down. And it doesn't mean that your family life was disrupted. It doesn't mean that your work life wasn't disrupted. It means in the eyes of the law and the way the system is set up, you're not injured enough. Isn't that a horrible thing to say? I have to say that to people all the time. You're just not injured enough. Gosh, if someone told me that, I would be so frustrated and upset. You mean I lost my job, my family life fell apart, and you're telling me because I don't have a catastrophic personal injury, I can't bring a lawsuit? And the reality is that's true. Yes, you can't bring a lawsuit because the system is not set up for you. The system is broken because it's so complicated and it's so expensive that we would be spending more money on the case than the case is worth. And when I tell you this information, after you get over the initial shock and disappointment, you ask me a couple of questions pretty much all the time. First question you ask me, is there anything else I can do? Can I file a complaint with the Maryland Board of Physicians? Can I make a complaint with the hospital? Just like this podcast, I give you the straight talk. I tell you, sure, you can do that. Those are feel-good measures to make you feel like you didn't give up, that you're still fighting. But don't expect anything out of it. The best you're going to get is some form letter acknowledging your complaint and giving you some boilerplate language that says, we are disappointed that you didn't have the experience that we tried to give you, blah, 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 blah. Pretty much we're throwing in the trash can and, thanks and have a nice day. So no, you're not going to get any satisfaction out of doing that unless the satisfaction is that you just feel that you did something and that you didn't back down. But getting any money out of it? No. Getting any kind of accountability out of it? No. They're not going to give you any accountability. They're just going to give you a boilerplate letter. The next question you asked me is, well, does this mean they just get away with it? And I used to have all these nice answers that I used to use as a younger lawyer, but I came to straight talk. And the straight talk is they do. They get away with it. Because if you're not injured enough, lawyers are not going to be able to take your case. Again, because we're going to spend more on the case than the case is worth. So yes, they get away with it. They get to commit medical malpractice on you, and they don't have to pay you. They don't have to take accountability. And that's why a lot of the times the system is broken. It's not working for you. And those of us who represent victims have tried to advocate for a different system. Maybe we could have a more inexpensive system where we could go to court, not before a jury, maybe present just some paper expert reports, call a couple of witnesses and let a judge decide. Well, what do you think? What do you think the response is from the other side? They have no interest. They don't want to pay out claims that they don't have to. They're happy with the way the system works. How is the system broken even if you're able to get through all these obstacles and be able to bring a lawsuit? Well, they drag you through the mud. Even on a clear-cut case, they drag you through 2 years of bruising litigation. They take your depositions. They ask you every question known to man from the day that you were born. They ask you every job you ever had and why you left that job. They scour your medical records to find one little thing that you did wrong. You didn't come to some little appointment. You didn't come for some lab work. They try to blame you, and they put you through the ringer. And then at the end of the case, they're forced to go to some mediation, which is where a mediator comes and tries to negotiate a settlement. And they come in and they offer you like $1. And then you go back and forth all day long until they get to $2. And I'm being facetious here, I'm being kidding. But they offer you very low money thinking you're going to take it because you're desperate. And then that fails. And let's say you can't settle the case, you go to a trial, they put you through that again. And if you get through all of that and you win, it's not over because they file an appeal and they say that what the judge did was wrong and they should take away all your money. But they can do it because that's the way the system is set up. Now, it doesn't sound like something you'd want to do, right? Yeah, but there are times that you have to fight. And when we go through a case in the beginning, I say to a client, look, here's the reality. Here's the straight talk. Here's what's going to happen in this case. But we got to battle. We got to hold them accountable because there's no other way. You do have a case, and you are the ones that can be the ones to change the healthcare system. Yes, it's about your individual case. And yes, it's about trying to get the most compensation I can for you. But what you are doing is a service because you're bringing to light medical errors. You're bringing it into the light, out of the darkness. And that's very, very valuable. And we can't do that without you. Yes, lawyers are necessary to have this process go from start to finish. But without brave clients like you, we can't do our job. So yes, the system is broken, but here's the good news. The good news is that if you do have a case and you are willing to battle, what are the odds? My experience tells me over 33 years, this is my own personal experience, is that 80% of the cases settle out of court. You don't even have to go to trial because they're good cases, they're prepared well. We prepare you on how to be a great witness, to tell your story in a very powerful way. So really the odds of settlement are on your side. So don't despair because you can get victory. You can get money compensation for yourself and you can hopefully change the healthcare system. So is the system broken for a lot of people? For sure. And we talked about this in this podcast. But the system does help a lot of people. It's the system that we have. We wish it was different and we wish we could make changes. But it's the system that we have. Remember, it all comes back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast. It comes from the laws in Annapolis. The other thing you can do is use your voice. Get in touch with your representatives. Tell them how medical malpractice has affected you and your family. Tell them that you don't think it's right, that it's so complicated and expensive. They'll listen to you, maybe not at first, but over time. If more and more and more of us are doing this, we can fix a broken system. So it's not all doom and gloom. I'm a positive person. I believe we can make change. But I wanted to just talk to you today in this podcast because I know so many of you are so frustrated that the system didn't work for you and you deserved an explanation why. Thanks so much for watching. We're going to be doing so many of these episodes to pull back the curtain and give you the straight talk that you deserve. Thanks again for watching. I look forward to seeing you soon in another episode.